Okay, we are live. I tried to change location. Sorry for the lateness. I tried to change location to see if it would help with the lag, but it doesn't seem to be making a difference. So we're just going to have to go with the flow. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining today's live. Let's just see where we're at on Instagram. Okay. Thank you for being patient. Okay. It looks like we're live on everywhere we're supposed to be live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Monday Night Live. Welcome, everybody, to Monday Night Live. Let me just stabilize my thing here. The plan was to use just one device to go live, but it doesn't seem to be working out that way, but that's okay. We will go with the flow and make sure that we get everything that we're supposed to talk about today, because I know that this is a highly requested topic. And so if you are joining live, whether on YouTube, whether on Instagram, whether on LinkedIn, welcome. And if you're catching the replay, thank you. Thank you for watching the replay. So today we're going to be talking about four communication styles, and how they either hurt or help your relationships. So four communication styles and how they either hurt or help your relationships. Now, the reason I'm doing this topic is because in my practice, for those who don't know me yet, or if you're connecting for the first time, by the way, this is a very good time to share the live with your friends, with your sisters, with your cousins, with your aunties, anyone who struggles with communication, anyone who struggles, who feels like they don't know how to use their voice, they have a hard time using their voice, or when they try to communicate, they are not heard, or they want to say one thing and they find themselves saying something else, or anyone who finds that they get easily triggered in conversations such that they're not effective, or anyone who just wants to be able to assert themselves better. Now would be a good time to share this live and make sure that they are connected. And so if this is the first time you are watching me or catching me, this is the first time that you're catching me live, I'm Dr. Yewande. I am a medical doctor. And my practice, primarily, I see professional women, high functioning women, ambitious women. And what I do is I help them with the tools that they need in order to show up as the best version of themselves, not only at work, but also in their personal lives as well too. So I help them overcome anxiety, burnout, depression, stress, right? And relationship challenges is something that comes up a lot in our conversations. And there isn't one week that goes by where we're not talking about communication. And so that's why we are talking about communication today. And so, welcome if you're joining me on YouTube, if you're joining me on Instagram, if you're joining me on LinkedIn, it's great to have you. So, communication is one of those things that I like to emphasize is a skill, okay? Because many times you'll hear people say, I don't know how to communicate, or I have a hard time communicating, or communication is a problem, right, for me. And what I often will like to tell people is that communication is a skill. And just like any other skill, it can be learned and it can be mastered with practice, with intentional practice. It is an art and a science. And we're going to be talking a little bit about how the four communication styles we're going to be talking about today can either help or hurt your relationships. So if you are just joining, now would be a good time to share this live with your friends, because the better, the more good communicators we have, the better this world will be. So go ahead and share while I dive right into the four communication styles. Now, if you're watching on Instagram, you might not be able to see the questions, but I do have some questions that will serve as reflection questions, that will serve as prompts, that will serve as a way to get your wheels turning on this particular conversation when it comes to communication. So, like I said, the conversation today is four communication styles, how they help/hurt your relationships. Now, the first communication style is passive communication. Passive communication. Now, I want to ask you, when you hear passive communication, what comes to mind? When you hear passive communication, what comes to mind? Okay, I see your message, Hola Gallery. Yeah, probably because our wait list is now closed. But you can send the office an email. I'm sure my office has redirected you to places that you can get connected. Unfortunately, the wait list is closed because right now people are waiting 1 year to see me. And so we had to close the wait list because it was just getting really long. So sorry about that. But you can still reach out to the office and they can redirect you to other therapists that might be able to help you. Okay. All right. So someone said passive aggressive. That's a good guess. We're actually going to be talking about that as a communication style. But yeah, it's a long wait list. Yeah. It's a long wait list. Well, the good news is that we are expanding into Alberta. So I don't know where you're located, but that's something that we can talk about offline. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay. They took care of you. Glad to hear that. So when you hear passive communication, what do you think about? What comes to mind when you hear someone say that I am passive with communication, or if someone says that, oh, this person is passive with their communication, what comes to mind? Okay, here, Mrs. Saga. What comes to mind? It's the first communication style that we're going to be discussing today. So someone said passive aggressive. Passive aggressive is different from passive. Passive aggressive is a communication style, but it's different from passive. Yeah, not talking, wanting people to mind read. Exactly. You got it. You got it. So, passive communication is basically when you don't express what's really on your mind, and you pretend like everything is fine when everything really is not fine. So it's a situation where someone maybe asks you to do something or asks you for a favor, and your immediate response is, sure, okay, no problem, I'll do it. Whereas on the inside, you're already cringing and wondering where you're going to get the time to do what it is that you said you were going to do. So people who have who communicate passively have a hard time saying no. They have a hard time communicating their boundaries. They have a hard time actually saying how they feel. And many times you can't really tell how they feel. In fact, they look like they're okay with all the things that you're asking them to do. And the problem with passive communication, because as we can see, as we can tell, if you are already overwhelmed with your schedule, if you already have a full plate, if you already have so many things that you're committed to, and someone else is now asking you to do something, and your first initial response is to say yes, or maybe someone does something that bothers you, someone does something that hurts your feelings, or someone does something that frustrates you, and you carry on with a smile on your face as if everything's okay, everything is fine, everything's good, it's okay, it's all good, and you always have that attitude, then it's a problem, especially because when inside you're actually feeling angry, frustrated, you're feeling like you're being taken advantage of, you're feeling like people don't really care about you, don't really care about your feelings. The problem is that you are not expressing your feelings. You are being passive about it. right? You're being passive about it. It can lead to resentment in relationships because, like someone said, Lola said, the issue is that you're expecting people to read your mind. You actually haven't said what is really going on and how you really feel. So you're expecting people to read your mind. You're expecting people to know. You'll hear commonly people say, "If they loved me, they would know." Well, how are they supposed to know? How are they supposed to know if you don't tell them? If you don't communicate, right? If they really cared about me, then they should know that I'm overwhelmed. If they really cared about me, then they should know that I'm tired. If they really cared about me, then they should know what I need. But the truth of the matter is that if you don't communicate, people aren't going to know. People aren't going to know. So, passive communication, I'm going to ask a question. Do you think that it helps relationships or do you think that it hurts relationships? When it comes to passive communication, do you think that it helps relationships or do you think it hurts relationships? What do you think? When you don't speak up for your needs, when you don't express your opinions, when you prioritize other people's feelings, other people's emotions over your own. Oh, okay, someone said it helps relationships, and then someone else said it hurts relationships. Yeah, someone says, yeah, so I love Dr. Yam's answer. Good evening, Dr. Yams. It hurts more than it helps. So neither of you are wrong when you say it helps, when you say it hurts, because in some situations it's okay to be, or we need to be passive, especially if it's life or death, right? When it's a life or death situation, that's not the time to start asserting your opinion or asserting your thoughts or your needs, right? Sometimes we are passive because we want to think about our response, but come back in a different way, right? But Dr. Yam says it hurts more than it helps. And that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because when you struggle to express your thoughts and feelings, when you have a hard time saying no, when you suppress your feelings, when you suppress your emotions and your opinions just for the sake of quote unquote, you want to keep the peace, unfortunately, what happens is people think that you're okay with it. You're okay with all the demands and you're okay with all the requests and you're okay with all the things that they keep asking you to do. And one day when you finally say you've had enough, they'll be wondering like, well, you never said anything. You never communicated. So how was I supposed to know you are not okay with me asking you to do all these things that I was asking you to do, right? And the reason why passive communication is more hurtful than it is helpful is because over time it builds resentment. You start resenting the people that are always asking you, oh, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? You start resenting the people that don't think you notice how tired and how burdened you are. Or interestingly, you start resenting people who know how to speak up. You start resenting people who know how to assert themselves. You start resenting people who actually know how to express themselves. So not only do we resent the people in our lives that fail to see how burdened we are with all the requests and all the things that they do that are hurting us, we also start to resent people who seem to know how to express themselves. So in general, being passive in relationships is not helpful. Is not helpful. It's more harmful than it is helpful. So I'll give an example. If you're in an organization and a team member asks you to take on extra tasks, you know what? They come to you and they say, you know what, Lola, I'm really overwhelmed and I have these projects that I need to work on. Can you take this on? Can you do this? Can you attend this meeting for me? Can you take on this client for me? Can you meet with this client for me? But your plate is already full. And instead of saying, you know what, I have a full plate right now, you say, you know what, yeah, it's okay, it's fine, I'll help you out. And you start to feel resentful because it's like, why am I the one taking on your extra work? Because you want to protect the peace, you want to look like a good team player, you want to look like a fair player, you say yes, when inside you actually really mean no. That's a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe for frustration. It's a recipe for resentment. And so passive communication hurts more than it is helpful. Let's go on to the second type of communication, which is aggressive communication. Aggressive communication. What comes to mind when you hear aggressive communication? What comes to mind when you hear aggressive communication? And to everyone who's just joining, we're talking about 4 communication styles, how they help and how they hurt our relationships. We just spent some time talking about passive communication. We said passive communication is when we do not express our needs, when we do not express our wants, when we don't express our desires, and when we prioritize other people's needs, wants, and desires over our own. Now we're talking about aggressive communication. Adiboni says forceful, great. Bola says highly emotional, yelling. Yes, wonderful. So again, aggressive communication, this is the type of communication where you are expressing your needs, you are expressing your wants, you are expressing your desires, but you're doing it in a way that is hostile. You're doing it in a way that is disrespectful. You're doing it in a way where emotions are actually driving. You know, Dr. Yam says fear and running for one's life, right? When that fear, when that injury is what is driving, what is dictating how you're expressing yourself. So people who communicate aggressively may yell, just like Lola said, but to be honest, you don't have to yell to be aggressive with your communication. They may speak with a loud tone, but again, you don't have to be loud to be aggressive, right? People with aggressive communication often interrupt. So they often will jump in. They don't allow the other person that they're communicating with to speak, right? They tend not to listen. And even if they are listening, it's just for a short amount of time, only to offer a rebuttal, only to come back and say something to oppose what the other person has said. They may use criticism, right? Where they are attacking the other person's character. They're attacking the other person's personality. You're so lazy. You're so silly. They're so disorganized. And they're really going at the person's appearance. They're calling the person names, right? Where they might use insults, right? Humiliation. Cassandra says manipulative. Hi, Cassandra. Yeah, so they will say things in order to suppress the other person's voice, in order to cause the person to think like, am I the one that's wrong here? They start to say things to turn the table around. They don't take responsibility for their own part in the disagreement. They are dismissive of the other person's point of view. So the other person might come with their own point of view and they dismiss it as if it doesn't matter. They diminish it or they disregard it completely. They disregard the other person's point of view. They are overbearing, meaning that as they could be overbearing physically, meaning that they can enter into your personal space. They start to use the advantage of maybe they are a larger size and they try to be overbearing. They enter into your personal space. This is where you see people coming face to face with each other. They may use, fists. They start shaking their fist or pointing their finger in the person's face, right? Body language, tone, the words used, all of those that are hostile, disrespectful, that would be considered aggressive communication. Now, the problem here is that many people who communicate in a way that's aggressive, they might use the excuse of, oh, I'm just direct. Who has heard that before? Hey, Cassandra, thank you so much. Yeah, I've missed coming on and sharing, and so it's great to be back on live tonight. So have you heard someone say, oh, I'm just being honest, or I'm just being direct? Who has heard that when someone has said something hurtful or disrespectful and they say it, well, I'm just being honest, I'm just being direct, I'm an honest person, right? Well, the truth of the matter is that you can be honest without being hurtful. You can be honest without being hurtful. You can be honest without being disrespectful. You can give feedback without giving criticism, without being critical of a person's character, right? There's a difference between saying you forgot to lock the door last night when you closed the store. If you say you are a shop owner and an employee forgot to lock the door, there's a difference between saying last night when you left you forgot to lock the door. I need you to remember to do that because it causes a safety issue for our shop. Versus you're so forgetful, you're unreliable, and then calling them names. I regret the day I hired you. Those things are starting to become criticisms, which is hurtful versus giving feedback in a way that's honest, direct, and more helpful. That used to be you. Oh, Cassandra, thank God for growth, right? Thank God for growth. All right. So the reason why, okay, so let me ask the same question I asked before. Aggressive communication, so yelling, calling names, criticizing a person's character, being overbearing. Is this helpful or hurtful for relationships? Is this helpful or hurtful for relationships? What do you think? Because at the end of the day, why we're here is to learn a better way to communicate. Yeah, the last says hurtful. Yes, it is hurtful. It's hurtful in relationships, especially if it's our go-to approach. Because what ends up happening is that people stop opening up to us. If we're the type of person who is only going to give criticism, who is only going to give hurtful feedback, the kind of person who is going to make other people feel small about themselves, or the kind of person who's going to get angry and yell, right? It's going to hurt the relationships. People are going to stop trusting us. People are going to stop opening up to us. People are going to stop coming to us for people are going to stop being vulnerable in front of us. Because when we're vulnerable, when we're open, it opens us up to their attacks. It opens us up to their criticism, right? And so over time, if we are continuously exposed to aggressive communication, we stop feeling safe around those people that communicate aggressively. And if we are the aggressive communication types, other people stop feeling safe around us. And that's a problem, especially in our most cherished relationships. People then may respond in a way where they become passive in their communication style, meaning that they stop expressing themselves, they stop communicating their needs, their wants, their feedback, because they just think, well, what's the point of me saying anything, because I'm just going to be met with yelling, or I'm just going to be met with insults, I'm just going to be met with criticism. Or even worse, people then may respond with aggressive communication. So that's what we call escalation, where one person says something hurtful, then the other person fires back, and the other person fires back. Where we call tit for tat, or matching energy for energy, or aura for aura, as the kids say these days, right? And before you know it, there's an explosion, there's an escalation. Right. And so, as we have said, aggressive communication is harmful to our relationships for all these things. If we're the type of person who feel, and I'm sure if we have been on the receiving end of someone's aggressive communication style, whether they are insulting us, whether they are yelling at us, whether they've now entered into our personal space, we feel bullied, we feel small, we feel threatened, right? And that is a natural response, which is either going to lead us to try to fight back, or we're going to freeze, meaning that we don't know what to say or what to do, or we're going to retreat, we're going to flee, we're going to run. And so, like we said, we've all agreed that aggressive communication is not helpful. In fact, it is hurtful to our relationships. So if you're just joining, we're talking about 4 different communication styles and how they help, how they hurt our relationships. The first communication style we talked about was passive communication. We've talked about aggressive communication. And now we're going to talk about passive aggressive communication. Passive aggressive communication. So once again, I'm going to ask, when you hear passive aggressive communication, what comes to mind? When you hear passive aggressive communication, what comes to mind? We spoke about passive communication being when you don't express your needs, you don't express your wants, you don't express your desires, and you're hoping that someone will just read your mind. And it leads to resentment, it leads to burnout, it leads to emotional withdrawal and distancing in relationship. We talked about aggressive communication, which is where you are expressing your needs, you are expressing your wants and your desires, but you're doing it in a way that is hostile and is disrespectful. And now we're talking about passive aggressive communication. Dr. Yeb says 2 for the price of 1. Exactly, 2 for the price of 1. Passive aggressive communication. Many of us actually have a PhD in this particular type of communication. Many of us actually are well versed in this particular type of communication. Yeah. So Cassandra says, expressing your thoughts, but in a joke. Exactly. That's called sarcasm. So passive aggressive communication is when we express our needs, we express our thoughts, we express our wants, but we do it indirectly. Like Cassandra said, we do it as a joke, or we throw in some sarcastic comments here and there, or we use our body language. We use our body language. So we may not overtly say, "Oh, I'm not happy with what you just did," or I don't want to do this thing that you've asked me to do," but we might roll our eyes or we might sigh, right? I remember speaking to a woman once, throwing shade, exactly. I remember speaking to a woman once and she was telling me about how she often gets frustrated when it's, the end of the day, or it's a Friday night, for example, and maybe the family is gathered to watch a movie, but she's stuck cleaning the dishes, doing the cooking, and instead of her to say something while the whole family is watching TV and she's in the kitchen, she's busy slamming the drawers, she's slamming the pots, she's rolling her eyes, she's getting frustrated. So she's expressing her frustration, but not directly. She's expressing it in indirect ways. Indirect ways. Cassandra said, punishing or withholding affection. Spot on. Spot on. Spot on. So on the outside, they may appear like everything's fine. I'm okay. You might even ask them, "Are you okay?" There's a bit of tension. And they're like, "I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm okay." But you can literally tell that there's something wrong, but they're not expressing it. They're expressing it, but in ways that aren't direct. They're expressing it through body language, through tension, through withholding affection, withholding information, right? The last says poor emotional regulation. Exactly, because when we are able to regulate our emotions, we get to the point where we are able to communicate exactly how we feel in a way that is clear and concise and direct. So people, they might use sarcastic remarks, like I said. They might say, "Yes, sure, I'll see your client," but then they show up late deliberately, or they do a shabby job on the thing that you've asked them to do because they think, okay, well, maybe next time this person will ask me again. So instead of saying directly, "No, I don't have the capacity right now," or "No, I can't do this thing that you've asked me right now," or "No, I can't meet with this client that you've asked me to meet with," they do a shabby job, they procrastinate, they basically don't do the thing well because they're like, "Well, okay, if I just do it anyhow, maybe next time she'll think of somebody else to ask. Next time she won't ask me." Am I stepping on your toes? Am I stepping on your toes? Like I said, many of us have a PhD, a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD and a postdoc in this particular form of communication. Now, the problem, wait, okay, so let me ask this question once again. Does passive communication help or hurt our relationships? Does it help or hurt our relationships? Because we've established that some of these communication styles help our relationships. Some of these communication styles hurt our relationships. So, does passive aggressive, when we're passive aggressive, does it help? Does it hurt? Hurt more than it helps. Yeah, hurt. It hurts more than it helps. I will even argue that it doesn't help at all. It doesn't help at all. Some might say that, okay, there's a time where it calls for you to be passive. There's a time where it calls for you. Maybe there are just certain relationships where you are dealing with a family member, for example, who is just set in their ways. They're stuck in their ways and there is no changing them. There is no, they're not reasonable, but you have to be in relationship with these people. And the best way to deal with it is just to be passive and just say, okay, ma, okay, sir, and just keep it moving instead of trying to continuously change their mind. There's some situations where being passive is just kind of the default and there's nothing you can do about that. There's some situations where being aggressive, and I'm not talking about insulting people, I'm not talking about humiliating people, I'm not talking about tearing people down, but there are some situations where you do have to raise your voice, right? I'm thinking about communication with kids sometimes. If your child is about to do something hurtful, that is not the time to be gentle. There's some times where you do have to yell, you do have to raise your voice, and it may come across as aggressive, but you're doing so with good reason, with a good explanation. Now, this is not an excuse for hitting, this is not an excuse for beating, this is not an excuse for shaming, humiliation, or any of those things. I'm saying that there is a time where your tone might need to go up because you're trying to prove a point or you're trying to get someone's attention, right? Rarely do we need to be aggressive in our communication, but sometimes it's necessary. Passive aggressive, though, I have a hard time justifying us being passive aggressive, even though that's where we will often default to because maybe it's a pattern that we've seen growing up, maybe because it is we don't know any better, and we think that this is just what I need to do to protect the peace, but there is a better way. The problem with passive aggressive communication is it actually induces anxiety in other people. When people have no idea, what is going on? Is she okay? Did I do something? Is it because I forgot to take the garbage out yesterday? Is it because I forgot to call her last week? Why am I getting this energy, this vibe from this person? It can be very confusing for other people that you're in relationship with if you are coming with this passive aggressive approach where you are saying everything is fine, but they can tell that everything is not fine. In that case, the best thing to do is either say, you know what, I'm going through a lot right now, but I don't really want to talk about it, or I'll talk about it when I feel ready. Give me a day or two, and I'll talk about it. One of the things that I've learned to say is I'm still processing. I'm still processing it. So if I'm feeling off and I haven't been able to find the words, I'll just say, you know what, I'm still processing what's happening. I can't really find the words yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. Right. So that gives the person a little bit of peace in that, okay, it's not because I forgot to take the garbage out. It's not because I did this and that, because when we're passive aggressive, when we're cold, when we are withdrawn, and we're doing it as a way to punish the other person, it's just not fair to them. It's not fair to them. It can cause mistrust. It can cause confusion because people don't know which version of him or her am I getting today. Am I getting the warm version? Am I getting the cold version? It can cause a lot of confusion in that situation. And if somebody is being passive aggressive towards you, I know that our natural response is to give energy for energy and just be like, you know what, I'm just going to leave her whenever she's ready or whenever he's ready, I will approach them. But sometimes curiosity can be very helpful in saying, you know what, I noticed that you're a bit off today. Is everything okay? And if they're like, you know what, I'm fine, I'm just going through a lot right now, or I'm still processing something that happened at work, then you're like, okay, let me know if you need me to talk. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here, right? Because many times what we'll notice is like, okay, we just back off, whereas the ideal thing to do is try to approach it with a bit of empathy instead of assuming that is because of something I've done or something I've not done. Just approach the person and say, you know, I noticed that you're a bit off today. Is everything okay? Instead of matching their passive aggression with more passive aggression. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the fourth and final communication style for tonight. We have talked about passive communication. We said passive communication is when we are not expressing our needs, our wants, and desires at all, where we are saying that everything is okay, everything is fine, when in fact it's not. We talked about aggressive communication, which is where we do express our needs, our wants, our desires, but in a way that is hostile, or in a way that is aggressive, or in a way that is disrespectful. And we talked about passive aggressive communication, which Dr. Yam said was 2-for-1, where we are expressing that we are unhappy, we're expressing our dissatisfaction, but in indirect ways, either using sarcasm, either using body language, either using our tone, right? Where someone knows that something is wrong, but we haven't come out to say exactly what the problem is, leaving people feeling confused and not really knowing what to do with the situation. Now we're going to talk about the fourth and final communication style. The fourth and final communication style, which is aggressive communication. Assertive communication. Assertive communication, which Lala has already put in the chat here on Instagram. Assertive communication. Now, when you hear assertive communication, what comes to mind? When we hear assertive communication, what do you think assertive communication is? Oftentimes, people will mix up assertive communication with aggressive, many times because they have been told that they are quote unquote aggressive when all they've been is assertive. Wonderful. Dr. Yem says self-aware. Lola says clear. I love that. Clear. So crystal clear. Cassandra says crystal clear. And I love that. Emotionally intelligent. Love that. Love that. Exactly. So when we talk about assertive communication, you have to be emotionally intelligent to assert yourself. Concise. Hi, Dawn. Concise. Absolutely. You have to be emotionally intelligent to be able to assert yourself because, first of all, you even need to know how you're feeling to be able to articulate how you're feeling, to be able to talk about how you're feeling. Right? So assertive communication is clear, it is concise, it is direct, it is respectful as well too, okay? It is respectful, it is balanced in that it is, you're able to express yourself, you're able to express your point of view, but you're also able to see it from the other person's point of view as well too. And so this is why, as Dr. Yam said, having a level of emotional intelligence, self-awareness is so important. Is so important, right? So when we are assertive in our communication, we speak calmly, we speak confidently, we are able to listen to the other person's point of view, and we may not agree necessarily with their point of view, but we are able to acknowledge that they have a different perspective from our perspective. But most importantly, we are able to sit with ourselves and think through what it is that we are feeling. We're able to sit with ourselves and think through and pinpoint the emotions that we're feeling. And not only that, we're able to express to a certain degree why we are feeling that way, right? It takes some sitting down, self-awareness, self-reflection to, and maybe even using a tool. One of my favorite tools is the feelings wheel. The feelings wheel You sit with the feelings wheel and you actually ask yourself, how am I feeling in this situation? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling dismissed? Am I feeling disregarded? Am I feeling unsure? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling scared? Right? All of those things mean different things, right? You could say, oh, I feel sad, but do you feel sad because you feel isolated and lonely? Or do you feel sad because of grief and loss, right? Those are completely different things. Those are completely different things. And so it does take self awareness, emotional intelligence, being able to articulate your feelings, to be able to assert yourself in your communication. So again, assertive communication, it is concise, it is clear, it is direct, it's respectful, it is balanced. You can still give people feedback. You can still give people, feedback without insulting them. Like I gave the example of the employee, you can give your employee who isn't pulling their weight feedback by saying, I'm confused, I'm frustrated, right? I'm disappointed by the fact that you show up to work every day because it keeps our patients waiting or it keeps our clients waiting. I need you to show up at least 10 minutes before the office opens so that you can settle in and be ready to receive our customers. Instead of saying you're so lazy, you're so unreliable, I regret the day I hired you, I can't trust you. All of that is not helpful. That's criticism. It's not helpful. But giving clear, concise, specific feedback is way more helpful. Is way more helpful. So assertive communicators are calm, they are confident, they listen to others, they respect other people's rights, they respect other people's emotions, right? I'm not saying that you should avoid speaking up for yourself because you're worried about hurting other people's feelings, because sometimes people's feelings are going to be hurt regardless, but you are not deliberately looking to tear someone down with your words and with your actions, right? It's not necessary. Now, I'm going to ask the same questions that I had asked before when we talk about assertive communication. Do you think it helps relationships or do you think it hurts relationships? Do you think it helps relationships or do you think it hurts relationships when you are clear, when you are concise, when you are respectful, when you are still able to talk about how a situation made you feel, but still also take into consideration how the other person feels? Does it help relationships or does it hurt relationships? Helps. Yes, Dawn said helps. More helpful than hurtful. It helps. It helps. Helps big time both ways. Yes, it does help. It does help. It does help. Absolutely. Now, are people going to like whenever you assert yourself? Not always. Not always. People might prefer the passive version of you, right? People might prefer the version of you that always says yes all the time. So they may not like it. But at the end of the day, people will respect you. Interestingly, people will respect you more for being able to say, you know what, I felt disappointed or I felt dismissed the other day when you did this and you did that, right? They may not like it, but there's a level of respect that they'll say, you know what, this one is not one that I can easily just push around. This one is not one that I can easily just throw things at her and she's going to take it. There will be some pushback. People can get hurt because they misinterpret. Absolutely. Absolutely. They can misinterpret what you say. The truth of the matter is you cannot always control how what you say lands in the heart of somebody else. We all have a filter through which we process information. So someone can say something as neutral as, are you okay? And we filter it into, oh, they think I'm irresponsible or something that they didn't mean at all, right? So you're right, Lola. People can get hurt because they misinterpret. But being assertive is the least confusing way to communicate. It's the clearest way to communicate. It's not always going to be perfect because we're dealing with human beings after all. But at the end of the day, being assertive is the most ideal way to communicate. It also builds trust. Absolutely. Absolutely. I speak to a lot of women who are very direct, but in a respectful way. And whenever they get feedback, because one of the exercises I get my clients to do is what's called a mirror exercise, where they ask their closest friends and family their strengths. And so these people who over time, I've also come to know that they are very direct individuals. With that directness comes trust. I trust that you're going to tell me the truth. I trust that you're going to be honest with me. I trust that I can come to you for advice and you're going to give me sound advice. I trust that when I'm out of line, you're going to put me in line. You're going to give me an honest perspective. But when we're the type of people who don't say what we mean, or you can't really tell, is she happy? Is she not happy? Is she okay with it? Is she not okay with it? People can't always trust that. Or what version am I going to get today? Am I going to get the warm version? Am I going to get the cold version? People can't always trust that. So you're absolutely right. It does build trust. It strengthens our relationships, because when I know that if I've offended you, you can come to me and tell me in a way that's respectful, there's a bond that builds there. There's a bond that builds there. Don says it creates healthy boundaries by being assertive in your communication. Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, boundaries are the things that we need to often communicate, because many times we'll create boundaries in our minds, but we actually haven't taken the step to communicate them. And then we're wondering why people are always crossing our boundaries. Well, it's like, did you ever tell people? Did you ever communicate your boundaries in the first place? And usually the answer is no. Right? So just to recap, tonight we have talked about the 4 different communication styles. We have talked about passive communication, which is not really saying what you think, how you feel, not sharing your needs, your wants, your desires. We talked about aggressive communication, which is sharing your needs, your wants, and desires, but in a way that is hostile and disrespectful. We also talked about passive aggressive communication, which is communicating your needs, your wants, your desires, but doing it in an undercover, covert, indirect way where people don't really truly know exactly what's going on. And we talked about assertive communication, which is being clear, concise, direct, honest, but still in a way that's respectful. We've asserted that assertive communication is the most helpful. There might be times where you need to be passive in your communication. Rarely is it ideal, but there are times where it is called for. There might be some times where you need to be aggressive in your communication. And like I said, it might be in a matter of danger, in a matter of threat to life or threat to limb, and you need to be aggressive in, like, there's no time to be nice here. You need to get someone out of danger. And so your tone has to be loud. It has to be forceful. Right? So there might be times when being aggressive is called for. We established that being passive aggressive, there's usually no good reason for you to be passive aggressive in your communication. Really no good reason, because it's hurtful, it is confusing, it is, if you have something to say, just say it in a way that's still honest and direct. And we talked about assertive communication, which is at the end of the day, still expressing your needs, your wants, your desires, but doing so in a balanced way, doing so in a clear way, doing so in a concise way, right? And that's the most ideal. I quickly want to mention that these communication styles, especially if we're going from passive to assertive to aggressive, they exist on a spectrum. They exist on a spectrum, meaning that you can be assertive, but on the passive side of assertive. This is where you'll meet people who will tell you no with a smile and say, no, I can't do that. I wish I could do that, but I can't do that. I wish I could help you out, but I don't have the capacities to help you out. And they assert themselves, but they say it with a smile. And then you have those who are on the aggressive side of assertive. They're still assertive. They are not disrespectful. They're not horrible. They're not violent, but they'll just say, no, I can't do that. Sorry. They might not even say sorry, or they might just say no, right? So even within being assertive, there's still a spectrum as well too. But as long as you are communicating in a healthy way, in a respectful way, in a way that isn't leaving you feeling resentful, isn't leaving you feeling like you need to avoid picking up people's calls, because sometimes that happens when you haven't found your voice enough to say no, you just avoid people altogether. We don't want that, right? We want to be able to express ourselves in a way that feels true to us, in a way that feels respectful to us, and in a way that doesn't damage our relationships, right? So yes, you can definitely come back to this video. It's going to be saved both on YouTube and Instagram. I want to leave you with a question tonight, which is, which of these 4 communication styles do you want to move away from this week? As I was going through the communication styles, did you find yourself more in the passive category? Did you find yourself more in the aggressive category? Did you find yourself more in the passive aggressive category? Or was it all of the above? If it was all of the above, is there one that feels like your dominant go-to? And where can you be more assertive in your communication this week? Where can you lean into being more assertive this week? Is it going to be at work? Is it going to be with your kids? Is it going to be with your spouse? Is it going to be with family members? Where can you move away from either being passive aggressive into being more assertive, communicating your needs, your wants, your desires in a way that is clear, concise, but still very respectful. Still very respectful. All right, everybody. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Yes, the recording will be available, and you can certainly always come back to this. Oh, hi, Annie. Good to see you. So Annie says, love that you're sharing this. It's much needed to bring clarity in a confusing world we live in. I'm now learning to speak my truth without being extreme. Thank you. Oh, you are so welcome, Annie. Thank you for joining. Yeah, the world will be a much better place if we are able to still communicate and speak how we feel, but in a way that increases the chances of being heard. Because when we're passive, we're definitely not going to be heard. If we're aggressive, we're definitely not going to be heard. If we're passive aggressive, we're probably not going to be heard. But if we're assertive, if we speak clearly, concisely, if we speak in a way that is respectful, that increases the chances that the message that we're trying to pass across will actually be heard. It's my pleasure. Next month, I'm actually going to be breaking down how to be assertive in your communication. There's a formula. Like I said, communication is both an art and a science. There's actually a formula that I teach in my practice. So next month, we're going to be going deeper into what it actually looks like to be assertive in the communication. So look out for that live. But next week, our topic is going to be a book review. Our topic next week is going to be a book review. This issue of communication comes up a lot in my practice, particularly in the context of marriages and long-term relationships. So the book that we're going to be reviewing next month is called The Marriage Habit. The Marriage Habit. And we're going to be talking about the highlights, the main points from the book. It's a great read. It's by a couple, a married couple, and they are the founders of Marriage 360, I believe is what it's called. And so if you want to read the book ahead of time, that will be wonderful. But I'm going to be going through some of the major points from the book that I know will be helpful. So That will be next week, Monday, same time. So Monday, February 23rd at the same time, which is 8 p.m. Mountain Time and 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And oh, there's a question here. Do you feel we need to follow up our no with an explanation? I don't think you need to, but sometimes people do feel, especially if you are on the passive side of assertive, some people might feel better giving a bit of an explanation. No, because I don't have the capacity right now, or no, because I need to rest that weekend. But some people just say, I wish I could. This is my goal. So I wish I could, but unfortunately I can't. And that's it. We can end it there. So you don't need to follow up with an explanation, but I know just from experience that some people have a hard time saying no as a complete sentence. We often hear that no is a complete sentence, but truthfully, especially if you're coming from being more passive, sometimes you feel like you need to add a little bit more, but it doesn't have to. Remember, you need to be concise. You don't need to go into paragraphs upon paragraphs of explanation. You can just say no because dot dot dot. No because I have other commitments. No because, you know, insert whatever explanation feels good there for you. Okay. So, like I said, next week, we're going to be talking about the book, The Marriage Habit. Next month, we're going to go into more tips and tricks. You know, these Monday night lives are here where I offer practical psychology for better living. So, things that come up multiple times in my practice because, like someone was saying earlier, they were trying to get to see me, but my wait list is quite long. It's closed. So what I decided to do is start to bring some of these important topics to Monday Night Live. I talk about them on my podcast as well, but again, this is more interactive. So I'm going to be doing these more often where I'm bringing the topics that I see in my counseling practice to the live. Now, another thing that's happening next Monday is our co-working sessions. If you're not aware, I offer free co-working sessions. Right now, they are once a month where we all come together, we overcome procrastination, we overcome avoidance. So anything that you have been procrastinating on and you need to intentionally carve out the time to work on, whether it's your taxes, whether it's a schedule for you're studying for exams and you want to come up with a schedule, or you want to study for your exams. If you are in a program and you haven't found the time to watch the videos, people have come to these co-working sessions. They've done family documents, they've applied for jobs, all the things that they normally wouldn't find the time to do, they come to these co-working sessions to do, and it has been amazing. We've been able to kick procrastination to the curb. And so this is an invitation for you to join us. Our next one will be on Monday, also Monday, February 23rd. We're going to be going live at 12 p.m. Mountain Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The link to register for free is in my bio. I'll also put it here. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it on the screen right now. But let me put it here on Instagram too. So Cami Company. So if anyone wants to join us for our next free co-working session, please do so. And let's get those things that you've been procrastinating. People have sent out proposals to clients. People have worked on their business plans. It's just a space where we have said, you know what? This thing that I have been avoiding for a long time, let me go ahead and do some work on it. So that's it for today, everybody. I didn't think we were going to go this long, but I want to say thank you to everyone who joined live, everyone who participated, everyone who is watching the replay. Thank you so much. And I will see you once again next time for our next edition of Monday Night Live. Take care, everybody. Bye.